Unitarian Universalists lack solidarity with the poor, and it is something that we need to talk about. So, as a poor person myself, and knowing and understanding the history of Unitarian Universalism, I am very disappointedly not surprised that my home congregation, well, not my home congregation, the congregation that I attend, the First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, refers to the Palestinian genocide and ethnic cleansing as the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. Now, I don't know what is conflicting about Nakba and Naksha. I don't know what's conflicting about the other atrocities that have happened since Nakba and Naksha. But what I do know is that it speaks to the rest of how Unitarian Universalism has long since lost its roots in being in solidarity with poor people. And this is the part where I explain. So before there was Unitarian Universalism, there were the Unitarians and the Universalists. Now, I forgot which side is which, but one side was the white people and the other side was Black poor farmers. Those two groups eventually conjoined, and I don't know how things went at first, but you can look at any given Unitarian Universalist congregation. Matter of fact, go to the UUA.org website, look up any congregation in any area. Go to the church's website and then look at the pictures. You will find that most to all those people are white. And as a Black person, I can only chalk that up to white people called themselves joining a group only to take it over and push Black and brown people out. And now, here in 2025, the shit is white. So after I learned the history of Unitarian Universalism, after I already been attending various congregations for years because I traveled, and when I traveled, I would try to go to the congregation in which the place I was visiting, which I was usually successful. And no matter where I go, even when the population is mostly non-white, the congregation is still white. Gee, I wonder why that is. And the way that the congregation near me talks about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict echoes into the lack of solidarity with the poor. And that wasn't the only red flag. The other red flag was when I attended a service recently, and they were talking about helping LGBTQ refugees from different states resettle in Minnesota. And I'm like, what about the homeless people here now that the mayor keeps sweeping their camps and throwing away all their stuff, especially as it gets colder? And mind you, I have not attended a service. I have started attending services just recently since COVID. And even before that, there was some red flags, but the red flags weren't as deep as they are now. Now that we're deep into COVID, deep into violence against homeless people ramping up, deep into like government sanctioned violence against LGBTQ people, especially trans people, ramping up. And to be here now, and they're saying Israeli-Palestine conflict, but then saying we will help LGBTQ people move here, is like, the people who could afford to move, right? Even if they gave up everything to come here, they could still afford to move. Whereas we know some people can't afford to give up everything to come here. But nothing is to be said for the people sleeping out on the streets now, the people in tents now, the people getting their stuff swept up by the city now. I was beyond, it's like I was shocked, but I wasn't, right? Because remember, at this point, I do know the history of Unitarian Universalism and how the poor black farmers got pushed out of a thing that they helped start. So, as a poor black person in 2025 that has been trying to get along with the Unitarian Universalists for a long time, and I'm sure not all congregations are created equal, but most congregations are really pushing the centerism. And again, I say that as somebody who has traveled across congregations, not really traveled across congregations since October 7th, 2 years ago, or more accurately, October 8th, because that's when they started bombing civilians with white phosphorus. But it all tracks. It all tracks into how Unitarian Universalists lack solidarity with highly marginalized people. And some will argue that they don't because they have such great solidarity with LGBTQ people. But as long as those LGBTQ people aren't poor, yeah, sure, they're doing fine. But the second somebody becomes poor, they are nowhere to be found. And some churches will be like, oh, we're fine because we give sandwiches and bottled water to homeless people. If you understand that sandwiches and bottled water isn't going to keep your phone on, if you understand that you are not paying your utilities with sandwiches and bottled water, you understand why it's important to give people money, the financial means to survive. And if you say, what about people who take that money and go buy drugs? You don't have it. You don't have it, and it's time for you to admit that you don't have real solidarity. Because rich people are taking your money and doing drugs. And you don't care because they're housed. But you care about how you can tell somebody that has less than you what they can and can't do with your money, even though it's their money once you give it to them. So just go ahead and fess up and admit that that you're not who you say you are. And in the meantime, I am deciding to separate myself from Unitarian Universalism because as a poor black person, it is not meeting my needs. I need people who will call a genocide a genocide. I need people who will value me for all of my demographics, including being poor. I need people who understand why being in solidarity with poor people is important. And that's just where I'm at. And I hope that things change in Unitarian Universalism. But as long as it's all upper class white people, it won't. And that's that.